Joseph Croskey. I am happy to speak today with Dr. Joseph Croskey, who is an associate professor at Penn West Clarendon campus, and he's the director of Act 101. Also the director of University Advising Services Center. And how are you today, Joseph?
Doing great. Thanks for having me today, Bob.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you. For those of us who are not in the academic world, what would you like us to know about your role at Penn West University?
I'm very, very lucky to work at Penn West University. We have, a number of students that I get to work with. I typically work with students who have not chosen a major, those exploratory students, or students who have combined their interest into one major that we call the interdisciplinary major. So I get to have fun conversations about what students are interested in and what they hope to do, what they hope to create in the world. And because of my experiences in so many different arenas, I can usually connect something they want to do with something similar that I've seen somewhere in the world. So day to day, that's most of my job, interacting with students. On the other side, the Act 101 side, we work with students that are Pennsylvania residents, that are low-income students who might either come in without the best academic preparation, or they're in a challenging program and they know they're going to need a little extra accountability support. So we provide resources to help those students that qualify for the Act 101 program.
Before we get too much farther, where were you born and raised?
I was born out in the West Coast in Washington. I was born in Tacoma, Washington, but my dad was in the Air Force. So a year later we moved to Oregon, a year later to Turkey, a little time in Florida before I joined him in Okinawa, and then grew up mostly in a small town in Illinois. I just came back from Rantoul, Illinois, where I grew up. Went to high school.
How far away is that from here?
It's about an 8-hour drive. It's 2 hours south of Chicago, 2 hours west of Indianapolis, a few hours north of St. Louis.
So you graduated high school from this place?
Right, Rantoul, Illinois, Rantoul Township High School.
Who was your best teacher or subject that you had in high school?
A friend of mine just asked me about Latin, but that makes me think of some of the activities I was involved in high school. Was very active with the student council, and the director of our student council was Mr. Gary Gaybauer. So he's the one I've stayed in contact with the most, in addition to some wrestling coaches and some other teachers there, but mostly Gary Gaybauer.
What weight did you wrestle?
I wrestled 48. Yeah, I think I wrestled 148 my senior year. That's when I'm going to, 145. Yeah, 145.
And they gave you 3 extra pounds at the end.
Exactly.
So after you graduated from high school, then what was your next step in life?
Then I went to West Point, and that's where the weights were confusing me. I was on the powerlifting team. I got to West Point, I thought I might wrestle, and they had to run miles up hills. And growing up, Illinois is flat, so running was a lot easier than it was at West Point. So I quickly shifted from wrestling to powerlifting, because powerlifting didn't require any running, and I finished powerlifting at 165 weight class.
So you went from Illinois to West Point. How big of a class, like at West, you got in because of your dad?
Maybe partially. I got a presidential nomination, mostly because I had done several things with student council. I was a state level officer in student council, and I'd worked at a student council camp, and I had done a lot of leadership things in my high school, scored well on the SAT, and scored well on other things. So I got a presidential nomination to West Point.
How big of a class, like most of the people that are listening to this don't know too much about West Point.
Right.
How big of a entry class was there?
So my high school was about 228, and West Point about 1,000. Let me cut that back. I think maybe 1,500 come in and 1,000 graduate. Now I've got my numbers backwards probably, but around that size.
So that's a big class. You went from a little school to a big school.
Right.
And how long, when you go to West Point, how long is that for?
You start July right after your senior year of high school. So you
Exactly.
start that summer and you finish in June, May or June, your senior year. So 4 years of school, and you don't necessarily take classes through the summer, but there's always some type of summer training, typically military training that you do.
If you go to West Point, you're committed to how many years?
5 years of active duty service after you graduate.
And is that considered Marines?
Army.
Army. So you're in the Army.
You're in the Army.
Okay, so you graduated from West Point, and then did they ship you somewhere, or where were you, some of the places you were stationed?
Yeah, because of my dad and growing up living in different countries, I wanted to go to a lot of different places in the military. My first assignment was to be an infantry unit in Germany, but my orders got changed and I ended up going to a Patriot missile unit in Germany, and we went to Desert Storm, or I went to Desert Storm with that Patriot missile unit. And after we came back from Desert Storm, I went back to Georgia. Tried to go to Korea, but they kept me at Georgia, and so I stayed in Georgia. I stayed an extra year trying to decide what to do, so I stayed in 6 years.
So 6 years, and then when you got out, what did you do?
I then worked for a chemical company, which I had hoped would allow me some travel overseas. It went from, they called it Lower LA. I was in Alabama, Mobile, Alabama, which is a lovely place. Enjoyed Mobile, and actually one of my high school friends came and ended up staying with me there. And then from there I went to California. I lived in Venice, just outside of LA, for a couple of years before I moved to Oakland. And then from Oakland, I switched from that chemical company that I worked with to working for a software company here in Oil City. But yeah, Hercules was the chemical company.
Of all the countries you've been in, besides the United States, which one did you like the best?
That's a tough question. I have enjoyed all the countries that I've been in, and I think the number is upward of 50 right now. So this morning, though, I checked the weather for Cabo Verde, and that weather seems to be idyllic. and I might be able to convince other people in my family to travel there because of that good weather. But I've always enjoyed something about whatever country I'm in, because you always find good people.
All right. Going from West Point to Penn West, how's that transition been?
The people are surprised to learn typically that I went to West Point, and I don't know if that's just my demeanor or or something else, but I am pretty relaxed and not as rigid, I think, as some people expect from the military background. And so what I'll say is I think the universe, God, has been trying to teach me discipline all my life, and I'm still trying to learn it. So I hope to help inspire students to live a structured life so that they can be successful in school and then successful in the things that they want to do, recognizing that sometimes discipline leads to freedom. And so the transition, I don't know if I can aptly indicate the transition. What I'll say is while I was at Desert Storm, after it was over, I had time to run and jog, and you just spend a lot of time in the middle of the desert. And so it came to me that I wanted to work in education. And that was probably natural because my mother was a first grade teacher. Her parents were teachers and principals and did things in schools. And so my dad was enlisted in the Air Force, but then he worked as a civilian doing workshops for helping people in the Air Force transition from military service to civilian life. And so I think that the calling to be in education has always been a part of me. So it's been a relatively easy transition to switch into working at Penn West that way.
You said that a couple hundred people graduated with you from your high school.
Mm-hmm.
Were you up near the valedictorian?
Yeah, I was not. I think Mitch Abney was our valedictorian, but I did well. What's funny when I think back on that, although I did well in high school, there were still some things, and this is the students I worked with our Act 101 students, typically their parents have not gone to college, and so there are things that they don't know about college. And today in the university setting, we might call it the hidden curriculum. And even in high school, even though my mom was a teacher, somehow I missed the deadline to apply for scholarships. And all these people at graduation were getting all these scholarship awards, and I thought, I wonder why I didn't know about these scholarship applications. But it didn't matter. West Point, they take care of the education for you, so I wasn't too worried about applying for scholarships.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I do not. I'm an only child.
So when you were at West Point, I guess Senator David McCormick was in the same time that you were.
Yeah, he was a fantastic wrestler. That might have been also why I didn't wrestle for the team.
Were you guys the same weight?
I'm going to say that he might have been a weight class heavier for wrestling than I was, but he was a tremendous athlete, and he was from Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania had a different wrestling style that I was not accustomed to. So my wrestling skills weren't as good as I thought they were when I got to West Point.
What advice would you give a young person who has their sights set on attending one of the U.S. military academies?
I would really strongly suggest that they go. There was a young man here who was thinking about West Point, and I think he's chosen to go somewhere else. But the opportunity it provides for development and growth while you're there are just amazing. And then afterwards, that continued cohesiveness. We talk about at the university helping students find their group or their sense of belonging at the university. Usually that's through a team or some club or activity they're involved in. At West Point, we're all going through the same misery together, and so it's all of a sudden you've got 1,500 people who you can identify with, and not only those people in your class, but the classes before and the classes that come after you. And so it gives you that sense of connection. We call it the long gray line to people, which is really a beautiful, powerful thing. And it cannot be understated that they will pay for your education. So in this environment, yes. If parents have any influence, remember that the child doesn't have to think about that. And I have classmates who went on to be doctors and lawyers and all kinds of things. So it doesn't really matter what you intend to do in the future. You get to serve your country, which is something I'm proud that I had the opportunity to do. I got to serve during war, which not most people look forward to, but it was certainly a developmental, if you will, experience. But if you have the opportunity, either academy, and even when I got out of the military, I was working in Alabama, I met someone who was in the Coast Guard. And I thought, boy, I should have switched to the Coast Guard. You're always on the coast with seafood and the water, but any academy would be a good academy. There's a woman at the university now who works there at Penn West with the credit union, Sue Steffi, and her granddaughter is at the Air Force Academy. So I enjoy having conversations with her and seeing how her granddaughter's doing. And yes, I would recommend the academy to anyone.
So you attended Clarion University?
I did not attend Clarion. After West Point and when I came to this area, I started working at Pitt Titusville. After I worked for the software company, I started teaching software at Pitt and Titusville. And then I got my master's from George Washington University. And then once I started working at Penn West, I got a faculty position. I started in another position. And when I got the faculty position, that's when I was made aware that I had to pursue a PhD, which is something I never thought I would ever do. I wasn't a fan of writing. However, because it was a requirement, I went to IUP then, and I studied at the Administration and Leadership program there to...
IUP is my ultra motor, so...
All right.
I always favor IUP, but keep going.
All right. So yes, I'm a Crimson Hawk and proud to have my PhD from there. And what was really fortunate for me is I was curious about this idea of meditation, mindfulness, if you will. And so for my dissertation, I was able to study the benefits of mindfulness meditation for students. And the benefits were profound. I had students who had Tourette's who were able to control that. I had students who were previously afraid to do math homework or would procrastinate on it. but then they would use the practices, the meditation practices, and they could tackle their math homework without that anxiety. And there were so many positive changes that the students noted. It made me want to continue learning about mindfulness and practicing it and teaching it.
What time in your life did you start meditating?
Really started meditating a long time ago. After I left the Army, I went to Curcio, which was a church retreat. And
where's Croskey at?
Churches hold it all over the country. You can go anywhere to participate in a
So
Curcio
that's the name
event.
of the church is Croskey.
It's the name of the weekend retreat.
Okay.
It's been 30 years, so I'm probably losing some details about exactly what Curcio stands for, but it's the beginning of your relationship with Christ, of your deepening your relationship in the church. And so there's a long period of silence during that weekend, and after that I continued a contemplative prayer practice for a number of years before I started learning about other types of meditation practices. And mindfulness meditation I probably started earnestly during my dissertation in around 2010, 2013.
What's your blood pressure?
I don't know what my numbers are right now.
Roughly, like the last time you ever checked, or they, a normal is 120 over 70.
Yes.
But as we get older, it kind of creeps up higher than that. So.
You know, I think it's really good, but I know also my wife's a dedicated runner and has been for a time, so her heart rate is lower. So that's what I'm working on now, is heart rate variability and getting my resting heart rate lower.
Your wife is the lovely Kathleen Elwood?
Yes, Kathleen Elwood, Sunshine, also known
and
as.
how long have you guys been married?
We've been married since 2010, 15 years.
15 years. And it's rumored that she works at Gannon University?
That's correct. She works at Gannon and has a similar role. Is that another?
That's where I got my master's from.
Oh, all right.
So there we had a couple of connections.
Yeah.
So if she's up there and you're down here, how's that work out as a couple?
Well, you know, what's interesting is when I travel, I work with the United Nations, and they often are located in remote areas for long periods of time, and their families are in some other country. So we're fortunate. I also work at Edinburgh campus now, so during the week I'll travel up one evening and I'll stay there, and then I'll work at Edinburgh, and then maybe stay there again in Erie with her. So it works out really well, I think.
You seem to have a very positive, upbeat outlook on life. Where do you think you get your optimism from?
Well, we'll start with God, and I guess probably through my mother is where I got the optimistic outlook.
So all your life you've been kind of optimistic.
I would think so. My wife, and I would agree, you know, she says I'm a lucky bug.
When was your most trying years that you've had so far?
You know, Bob, I've been really fortunate. Maybe it's my too optimistic, too rosy lens perspective on things. I've certainly had trying times. You know, West Point's not easy, but it's worth it. Ranger school in the military is not easy, but worth it. Going to war, not easy, but in retrospect, easier than Ranger school. And so, you know, I've had some trying times, and I think it's how you frame things. There's a quote by Rumi, and I'm not sure if I can get it quite accurately, but it's something to the effect of, imagine that everything in your life is an opportunity for you to benefit from. Yeah, that's not the best way to describe that quote, but that's basically it. And I might look it up while we're working on this and see if I can find it.
Do you have any physical routine now? What's your, do you have a routine, a fitness routine?
Yeah,
You said your wife likes to run, so what do you do?
I walk, try to get my 10,000 steps in. I try.
Every day you try to get 10,000 steps in?
I'll say every day but Sunday.
You can get 10,000 steps in a day,
Yes.
so 6 out of 7.
Yeah, so 10,000 a day is what I try to do. I try to I don't call it fasting so much as I try to stop eating around 7 and not eat again until later in the morning the next day. So intermittent fasting might be what some people call it. Try to eat a plant-forward diet, and cut back on the sugar and really cut out the processed foods is probably the main thing for me.
You're very community-minded locally, and I understand you spend some time in Africa every summer?
Yeah, different places every summer, every year. Again, I get to do these workshops for the United Nations called Peace on Purpose.
So it's through United Nations that you do your travel?
Correct, now it is. The UN Foundation sponsors this program in combination with Lululemon and other funders to send trainers like myself to places where the United Nations staff are working. I just came back from Ethiopia. Earlier this year I was in Afghanistan, in Cabo Verde, which is an island south of Portugal and west of Africa. So I hope to go to Lebanon and Syria this fall.
Of all these places you traveled, which one was the most dangerous, besides your desert storm?
Yeah, security-wise, I think, in terms of rankings on whatever government agency ranks, danger, Afghanistan was the most dangerous, but truly when we got there, we were on a compound with walls 30 feet high and topped with barbed wire and the guards walking around. There was no reason for us to be anxious about anything happening to us.
It sounds so far like you've been going to where it's warmer environments. Have you been to any cold environments?
I haven't been to any cold environments at a cold time of year, fortunately. I think the furthest north I've gone with the United Nations is Denmark, but that was in the summertime and it was beautiful. So Albania was in the fall and it was beautiful. I've been fortunate that way.
What's one of your greatest life lessons you've learned?
Probably 3 words, working on all the time, trying to improve my ability to be grateful for the things that are happening and accepting the things that are happening right now, and forgiving. I'm trying to work into my noggin here the prayer of St. Francis, let me be an instrument of thy peace, and so I'm working through all those steps.
I grew up here in Clarion County, and I never had any, I never knew any people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how can you help us that have never been around colored people? How can you help us educate?
Yeah, so, sadly, because of being here in America and all the media that we're exposed to, I suppose, your first reaction might be one based on things you've heard versus your own, interaction with somebody. So, what I try to do with everyone is treat them as a human and forget any outward appearance that I may be, looking at.
Well, yes, I'm kind of clueless.
You're right,
right. I don't, like, people call everybody racist and everything like that. I didn't know if it's even permissible to bring it up.
It's certainly permissible to bring it up, and it's certainly a challenge these days, right? I moved here from California, and I think because of people's interactions there, and we'll just say racist or biased attitudes, it felt more prominent there, the prejudice against black people, than it did here. And I think here, we've had some incidents. When I first moved here in the late 90s, I went to a restaurant with a guy, it was actually a Polish club in Oil City, and they wouldn't let us in because the guy at the door said because he's black, right? So that happens, right? And there are people who still think that way, that we should separate because of the color of the skin, and that's unfortunate. I think there are just as many people who don't think that way, and hopefully the people who are not thinking that way can influence those others to change their opinion.
I don't ever think I even got to talk to a black person until I was in college.
Right.
So there, the first 18 years was, like even right now, I guess in Clarion County, there's only 5% of the population is black. So that's, 95 to 5.
It's not likely that you're going to bump into somebody.
That's why I appreciate that you're willing to sit down, and I'm hoping that it just gets everybody more comfortable with everybody, because I've known you for a good many years, and we never had any trouble.
Right.
So I just...
That's it, and just, it's not easy to look past. I mean, I have my own biases, right? I was in the military, I like physical fitness, so I'm biased towards people who appreciate physical fitness and doing those things. So, I have to recognize that in myself, and although I try to promote those types of activities that will help us to be healthy, because if we can get our energy right or get our physiology right, then our psychology will be better. So I think that's part of why I'm happy. I've always exercised, and I think that's a key component to how you approach things.
For a while you were with, what's his name, Douglas Frederick?
Oh yeah, for a while I was the Frederick Douglass Institute director, and the Frederick Douglass, he was a prominent man in his day. He helped convince Lincoln that slavery should be ended, and he helped recruit black soldiers to fight for the North. And his last speech was at Westchester University, and when that was discovered, they created the Frederick Douglass Institute to help students understand more about the kind of things he stood for, and to give students the opportunity to be involved with educational activities that would improve their lives. And so one thing that they do are the Douglass debates, and we also do the research and arts conference in the spring. So students all across the state system now can participate in that, those Frederick Douglass Institute activities.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about? What's your points of interest?
Yeah, Bob, again, this idea that we call flourishing, and flourishing amounts to, I think, working towards those things that we value, our virtues, and working towards them, knowing that we're going to fall short, but then working to get better and get up and work towards them again. And the virtues, love, courage, compassion, those kinds of things. And for me, trying to do the things that I know are going to keep me healthy, again, because if our energy is right, then we can give more energy to the work that we have, we can give more energy to the people, the relationships that we have. So last summer, I was sponsoring a walk once a month. We would do a walk through town for about a mile, then we'd gather for some food, healthier food, and have a talk from someone in the community about something either that they were interested in, but usually along the lines of health, healthy behaviors or healthy eating, and intend to bring some other things to the community similar along that line, either talks in the evening, but again, just trying to encourage people to acknowledge that our lifestyle is challenging our health, our health span, and we can make some decisions and choose to be healthy. And there's some support out there, and there are a lot of resources around the community to help people to be healthy and to build community, to recognize that empathy and compassion are values that I think we should strive for.
What's your take on Robert Kennedy? He's in charge of the health.
Yeah, it's confusing to me. I think And some of the alternative practices that I imagine he supports, I'm aligned with. And then the other parts, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson kind of said it wisely. It's funny that we don't today want to trust scientists and historians and people who've spent their lifetimes on one particular aspect of our health. We wouldn't know that running was good for us without scientists. We wouldn't know that sugar was bad for us without scientists. And yet he's trying to challenge science in some issues. So, like with all of us, there's some good and there's some bad.
All right. He's trying to get, the way I understand, he's trying to get country healthier by eating better. So, and that sounds like what you were talking about, like
yeah.
less processed sugar.
Less processed food, processed garbage, whatever you want to call it.
And especially sugar.
Especially sugar. Sugar is one of the leading, it's how cancer survives, right? And people just don't know that sugar helps those cancer cells. So the more sugar we can cut out of our diet, especially we can cut out drinking sugar right away. Get rid of the Gatorade, get rid of the Cokes and Pepsis and sodas. Just get rid of all those sugary drinks and you're on a great start towards being healthy. And then reading labels. And most things that are in a box, there's probably sugar in it. So eat from the outside aisles and you'll be healthier and happier.
I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Unless you want to bring up anything else, we're going to call it a day.
I think we can call it a day. There's a lot more to bring up, but I really appreciate this time with you.
And this is the end for round one, podcast 110.
Thank you.